Podcasting from the beautiful state of Maine, welcome to another episode of the Learning from Leaders podcast, the show that focuses on identifying and developing the skills and behaviors that will inspire, empower, and compel others to follow your lead. Listen as Patrick's guests talk about the powerful leadership approaches they have identified and developed, which are vital for leading in today's challenging times. These are the same approaches that will positively impact you as a leader too. Learning from Leaders provides the right balance of leadership research with real-world scenarios, making it easy for you to rise above your best. All right, let's start the show.
I'm Patrick Veroneau, the Behaviors Guy, and you're listening to Learning from Leaders, where we not only showcase incredible leaders who have built powerful and productive organizations, but also speak to the experts who have identified the skills and behaviors that make incredible leaders. This is your time to hear leaders and experts share their stories of challenge, learning, and growth to help you maximize your ability to lead yourself and others effectively. It's all here on Learning from Leaders, because leaders are learners. Hey everybody, you are in for a treat today. My guest is Mitch Russo, a successful entrepreneur who started his first company back in 1985, a software business called Timeslips Corp., which he then sold at the age of 42 and became independently wealthy. And from there, if that wasn't enough, he then went on to partner in a business with both Tony Robbins and the late Chet Holmes, who are both legends in both marketing and sales and personal development. He was the CEO for that company, Business Breakthroughs International, and also went on to set up a successful partnership with Kevin Harrington. On top of that, he also has two successful books out, one called Power Tribe's Book, How Certification Can Explode Your Business, and the other called The Invisible Organization, How Ingenious CEOs Are Creating Thriving Virtual Companies. This episode is packed with so much value. So let's get into it. Mitch, I want to thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast today. A good friend of both of ours, Susan Ibbets, was the one I think that introduced us. So I'm glad we had an opportunity to connect. Your background is so inspiring in terms of what you've done in starting out your own company back in the 80s, the software company, and then being able to retire from that independently and really do a bunch of other things where your focus was on taking really the abundance I think that you experienced and then paying it forward to other people to help them out. And in the environment that we're in right now, I had an opportunity to do a workshop around helping people navigate job career changes. And I think there are a lot of people out there that are thinking, what do I really want to do these days? With all of the changes that have gone on and people being remote now. And I thought based on your background and the books that you've written, maybe that was an opportunity for you to really help listeners. How do you navigate that?
Sure. Well, it's a very pertinent question right now. And I'm going to approach it from two different angles, because I think there are people who are creators, and those are those of us who have intellectual property that we've built and created over the years. And those of us who literally were doing great stuff in our lives, but really never built the intellectual property that some others have. So from each perspective, there's a seismic shift that's happened already, as we all know. But there's opportunity now that just never existed before. And that's why, you should never waste a good catastrophe. And here we have an excellent catastrophe not to waste. So here's some ideas, and Patrick, you could take me anywhere you want from there. But the first idea is that if you are a business owner or a coach or a consultant or a trainer or a leader, and you have intellectual property that you have deployed that has helped others, and maybe you have spent much of your business life on stage talking to people about their mission and how that moment in time might affect them for the rest of their lives. This intellectual property that you've created is very valuable. Most people found that using it on stage is great, but beyond that, they aren't quite sure how to. And that's what I've helped many clients resolve and move into the digital world, move into the virtual world, and more importantly, move into the world of building teams, cultures, and tribes. So does that resonate? Is that a good place to go?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay,
And
good.
I will, for a minute there, I think it's interesting, right? At this time, we don't hear many people talking about the environment we're in right now as an opportunity. And I think that's such an important thing that you said there, that in this challenge that's all around us, if we focus on just the negatives, we miss, I think, real opportunities, like you're saying about what are the opportunities here?
Well, I just want to tell you quickly my reaction. When I realized that we were about to be quarantined, this goes back in March, I think, that we were about to be quarantined, that the economy was about to shut down. And I got, of course, like everybody else, I got a little scared. I was, well, what does this mean? Am I going to get sick? Blah, 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 blah. But then I thought to myself, I got to get into action because this is all going to be over before I know it. And then I will have done nothing but watch Netflix. I'll be so mad at myself. And that's when I went into creativity mode and I just started building stuff and writing stuff and recording stuff. And it's turned into a whirlwind of activity for me. But to answer your question, let's take a look at what most people have. Okay. So the opportunities here are vast, and clearly no one gets this opportunity in terms of time, in terms of space, and in terms of getting a lot of good sleep. So let's use all of those things, the good sleep to power us, the time to give us the space to create, and honestly, the fear to motivate us. Because I don't know about everybody, I get motivated when I get nervous. If I get too comfortable, I'm complacent, I rest on my laurels, I don't go really into creative mode as easily, at least not in these topics. But I found that this was motivating. The environment was motivating to me. So let's take a look at some of the opportunities. The first opportunity is, what is it that you do? Well, let's take an example. You speak from stage. You have this incredible program. You've written some books. You have some content. Why don't we take that content and turn it into a learning management system? Why don't we embed it into a course? Why don't we sell that course? Why don't we give away the first lesson of that course for free? Why don't we go on Facebook Live and just talk about that course and get people to take it for free and improve their lives, or at least part of it? Let's use this opportunity to lead. Let's be a leader. And you know what? You don't need a title. You don't need to be anointed the king. You just got to go. Just get in gear and lead. That's my first thought. What do you think about that, Patrick?
I think that's great. Although I can hear people already saying, you know what, Mitch, that's great for you. You were successful early on. I can't do that.
Why can't you do that? Explain to me I think I have an idea of why, but tell me what
I think it's so many, for me, I think what you hear is it's just so many people's false beliefs of what they can't do, right? They look at, it's somebody else that's going to be able to do it, but not me. For whatever reason, I just can't get over that hurdle.
Right.
That's a real struggle for people. That obviously, if somebody else can do it, it's doable. It's just helping people. How do you help people get over that? Where they might be saying, I don't know that I can do this, Mitch.
So I have in my own makeup, my own emotional makeup, when I hit barriers like that, I like to break things down into very small and simple steps. I remember looking at writing a book for the first time, and I thought, I'm not an author. I can't write. How am I supposed to write a book? And I thought, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I probably won't accomplish my goal. That's fine. I'm going to make an outline, and I'm going to name the 10 or 12 chapters of a book I might someday possibly feel like writing. So I wrote the outline, and then I said, okay, I got the outline. Maybe what I'll do is, I don't know, maybe write a paragraph or two about each chapter to kind of see what would go in that chapter if I were to write this book. And so I get a few paragraphs done, and I notice I kind of get hooked in one thing, and I keep writing and writing and writing and writing. And I said, okay, well, I just move on and write a few more paragraphs. And so my process, Patrick, is all about breaking things down into small chunks and then accomplishing little things on a daily basis. Now, my background is I've been educated as an electrical engineer, and my thinking, which I call systems thinking, is a way of chunking down tasks into very small processes that I already know how to do. Now, if I hit a part where I don't know how to do it, then I ask around. I don't necessarily hire a coach immediately. I might at some point, But what I do is I ask around. I said, is there somebody who's done this before, who's in my network, who I can maybe spend a half hour on the phone with or on Zoom and ask a few questions? And I get over that hurdle, and then I take the next one. So for me, it's always been, it's eating the elephant one bite at a time, really. It's really how I've always looked at getting just about anything done.
I was just about to say that, use that analogy too of eating the elephant, because it really is. It can look so daunting on the front end, but once you break this thing down, you're right, into doable pieces, you realize, maybe I can do this. I can do this small piece.
I remember the first time I had to stand up in front of an audience in a professional way. I mean, my parents used to force me to stand on the chair and sing at Passover, but at least I got a quarter for that, so it was okay. But I mean, other than, that in terms of public speaking, I remember that I actually turned down the first several opportunities to speak in public because I was too afraid. And then at that point, I was invited to a very small event. And I said, what the heck? If I'm going to embarrass myself, it'll only be in front of 12 people. So I'll do it. And it turned out it was a lot of fun, actually. And all of the fear for me evaporated the minute I opened my mouth. I was terrified walking up to the microphone. I was terrified saying, thank you for inviting me. I was terrified to the point where I looked around and saw the whole audience. And then I opened my mouth, and that was it. The fear was gone. I just began talking. And I never do have a script for when I talk, when I speak. I just remember a story and I tell stories. To me, storytelling is my way of communicating because it's so natural for me.
Yeah. And that really is how we learn best, is by listening to stories.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that the process for most people is, if I was to help somebody right now, my first question would be, where are you at right now? Let's take stock of the assets that you have. Everybody has assets. Not everybody thinks they do, but everybody has assets. And if you were to do nothing more than make a list of all the things that you have as assets in your life, all the abilities, all the skills, all the creative things you've done, all the content that you've written, recorded, built, created, and put them on a single sheet of paper, you might surprise yourself. You probably have more than you think you do. Next question is there a pattern here? Is there something I can string together and turn into something, a valuable process, course, program that others would enjoy and get benefit from? And if the answer there is yes, but it's missing some pieces, make a list of the pieces that you're missing. Write that down. Take the outline approach, start creating those pieces. And then from there, see what else you're missing until you have something that's kind of workable. Never, ever go for perfection. That never works. And besides, the price of perfection is bankruptcy across the board anyway, as we know. Instead, go for workability and then try it out. I mean, we have this universe called Facebook, or LinkedIn, whatever your universe may be, where you can get on live for free, at least on Facebook, most people can. And you could tell your story and you could let people react. And you could ask questions like, what did you think of what I just said? Or I'm going to take you through this process. Can you tell me if it works or not? And then don't be upset if you don't get good feedback. Use that feedback to improve your process. When I first started Timeslips Corporation, what I did was I went on to CompuServe, which nobody other than you, Patrick, might remember. It was before AOL, and it was where I connected with a group of lawyers who happened to be a little bit more technology savvy than the rest of them. And it was there that I started floating these ideas and sending out demo discs and beta versions of our software. And it turned out to be the key, in effect, for me building the product that we ended up building that took our legal software world by storm back then many years ago. So every single thing I've described is simple, small, doable, and generally accomplishable in a day or two.
And something in the time that we're in right now, you mentioned a great point that you thought about yourself, like, quick, I got to get busy in this time to make use of it, that there are so many people. When are we ever going to have this time again like this, probably, to really be able to sit down and take inventory, take a piece of paper and write down.
That's so true. I mean, it's almost and this is going to go against what a lot of people are feeling. I think we're in a huge seismic shift. I think the world is shifting in a very positive way. There's a lot of pain right now, a lot of negativity, a lot of upheaval, a lot of illness, a lot of death, unfortunately. But I think that as they say, this too shall pass, and we will reach a place where there is and again, maybe it's my overly optimistic attitude, but we'll reach a place where we can say this is now a better world. It's a world where we have transitioned to working in a different way. It's a world where we have a better health care system. It's a world where people are treated more fairly no matter what their race, creed, or color. It's a world where we are more open to understanding one another and their plight than we were before. My viewpoint is that this is all coming. It doesn't mean it'll be here by Thursday, next Thursday rather, but it will. Mark my words, on this show today with you, Patrick, I predict that this will be a better world 1 year from now than it is today.
I believe you, and I believe it myself. To me, a lot of this seems to be a dress rehearsal.
Good way of thinking about it. Absolutely. What is it a dress rehearsal for in your case?
I think for what can be,
Okay.
if we really take advantage of this also, but how do we deal with challenges going forward that could be bigger than the things that we're dealing with right now? How are we going to be most effective? It was interesting. I read an article not that long ago, and the writer of this article said, if you look at the first quarter of this year, we have experienced an impeachment process. We have experienced a pandemic. We've experienced a financial crisis, and we've experienced racial unrest, all in the same year. So 1968 was racial unrest, Nixon was impeachment, the pandemic of 1918, and the financial crisis of 2008. And we've taken all of these things and condensed them into one quarter, basically, of the first year of 2020. And to me, the article wasn't about this, but I thought the opportunity to me is to say, how do we want our politicians to behave? What do we want from them? How do we want our healthcare system and how we treat our own health to change because of this?
Mm-hmm.
How do we want our behaviors and interactions with other people to change because of this? And what do we need to do financially to create our own security so that when things like this happen, we're not at the mercy of everybody else?
Well, we thought we were secure. We thought we were healthy. We thought our political situation was somewhat stable. And all of these things turned out to not be true. So aren't we lucky? We get to solve all these problems at once instead of having to drag them out over 10 or 20 years. To me, that's the opportunity of a generation. I look at my daughter, she's 26 years old. And I think to myself, on one level, it's unfortunate that she has to inherit this world that we left her, or that we're leaving her, a world filled with debt, a world filled with strife. On the other hand, we were left with the same kind of world when we were 26 years old. That was the era when everyone was building bomb shelters in their backyard because they were afraid we were going to get nuked by Russia. There was all of this upheaval is generational, and this is their generation's upheaval. For us, our job is to remember who we are and not get caught up in the fear or in the stories of what people tell us.
Yeah.
The stories are the most damaging and destructive element of our existence today, and it's been proven over and over again. Why would you tune into a news channel whose only objective is to make more money by making sure that you pay attention to every word they say 24/7 so that they could sell you more canned goods? What is the point of this? How does this work for you in your life? I look at my mom, who's glued to CNN, and I said to her, no wonder you're upset. No wonder you're in a bad mood. No wonder you feel the way you do. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. You're not benefiting yourself. Those newscasts are not for you. They're for them. Get focused on what's for you. And that's what, I practice that for the most part. I don't think I mentioned this. I don't know if you knew this about me, but I'm a trader. I've been a professional options trader before, and trading is in my blood. I trade almost every day. And I looked at this whole financial crisis and thought to myself, instead of being afraid, which I was, I asked myself, what opportunities do I have here? Well, let's see. I could buy puts. Yeah. And then when the market goes down, I could make money. I could hedge my portfolio. Yeah, I could do that too. I know how to do these things. It's not that I did them a lot before because I never was in this environment this way before. So you have to take stock of who you are, what you have, what your assets are, and ask yourself, what can I do today, right now, other than sit around and feel sorry for myself?
Yeah. Now, you have quite a history too, in terms of some of the work that you've done creating virtual teams, that you were successful on your own. And then you went off and started a partnership with two other fairly heavy hitters, right? Two that are favorites of mine. One, unfortunately, is no longer with us, right. Chet Holmes, but Tony Robbins as well. That Obviously, I think that speaks to your level of success, that you're in a partnership with these two. What was that like?
Well, I mean, imagine you know them. Some listeners may not know who Chet Holmes was. He died in 2012, but Chet and I were best friends for decades before we worked together. And so working with my friend was an amazing experience. But what I never experienced was the type of mentorship that I got from Tony Robbins. That to me was an incredible gift, shock, surprise, delight. I learned so much from Tony. And I would tell myself that, you know what, every day is a gift that I get to spend working with Tony and Chet. And I absorbed it all. I made notes. I wrote things down. I went out of my way to make sure that they knew that I appreciated them and what we were doing together. And in partnership, we had created something very powerful. We went from almost nothing to a close to $30 million organization in less than 5 years. So we were able to harness the energy and the talent and the creativity of the three of us put together and each of our respective abilities and build something amazing.
Which you really have almost proven going forward, right? In terms of this virtual teams and being able to build out a successful business on your own.
Absolutely. So that was the first book, The Invisible Organization. And that book turned out to be a blueprint kind of a book. It was how to transition from a brick and mortar company to a virtual organization. And there are parts of that book that are obsolete and no longer relevant, which are the technology parts of the book. But the parts of the book that are not are the mindset of the CEO discussion, the leadership discussion, the management process, and some of the marketing superpowers that virtual organizations acquire when they move from when they move from atoms to electrons. And once they make that transition, worlds can change rapidly. So yes.
If you were to put a percentage on it, a standpoint of skill set versus attitude in this environment that we're in, how would you mix that up?
90-10.
90-10.
90-10 mindset and attitude, 10% skills. And here's why. Skills can be learned. Most skills can be learned for free. You can go on YouTube and learn. I can't imagine what you can't learn on YouTube these days. But more importantly, you could also find people in your network to work one-on-one with you. For heaven's sakes, get an accountability partner. I built accountability partnership software for people to do just that. So get an accountability partner in your life and together hold each other up, hold each other accountable. Make sure you're reaching your goals. I mean, that's all part of how we support a strong framework for a great attitude and making sure that we keep our mental space clear and wholesome.
Along those lines, taking a step back, you mentioned mentorship in Tony and
yes.
What you learned from him. My guess is, and I've had them myself, how important they've been in terms of, with all the negativity that's going around, right, is latching onto those people that are like-minded or that support where you're going as opposed to tell you why you can't get there.
Well, mentorship is as much about a transfer of skill as it is about a transfer of mindset. I've had mentors all throughout my life, mentors and coaches, I should say, all throughout my life. And today when I work with my own clients, I have the people I coach, I tell them to do just one thing for me. if we're going to work together, when I ask you to do something, I want you to do it. I don't want you to question it. I want you to execute the things I tell you to do. If you have questions about how, sure, let's talk. If you have questions about how you feel, absolutely, let's talk. But if you're not going to do what your mentor or coach tells you what to do, what's the point? Don't bother. Go back to watching Netflix. It's frankly more fun.
I love that. And those are difficult conversations, I think, at times to hear. Maybe not for you to tell somebody, but to hear somebody say, like, you got to do this. You need to step up.
Well, once again, it's all a matter of perspective, right? Because I was told those things when I was a young man. When I was going through this, I had people say to me, look, if you're not going to listen to me, there's no point in us talking anymore. And I had to shut down my ego and open up and hear what they had to say. I had a guy who literally saved my company by talking to me that way back many years ago, when he was trying to impress upon me that my approach at building a particular piece of software was simply never going to work. And a quick example, we were trying to convert a DOS program to Windows, and we were told that's the only pathway to go. And he basically said, look, shut that down now. You've already wasted 18 months. Now let's do it the right way. And I could have defended myself even further, but I had no reason to, because he had already done it 5 times. So I just listened and I did it, and he saved my company basically.
So I'll ask you along those lines, generationally, do you think there's a difference in terms of receptivity?
That's a great question. I mean, I think people are people, to be honest. I think mindset issues have plagued us all from the beginning of time to now. I remember when Chet and I used to travel together. I think I'm comfortable sharing this. Chet used to take medication before going on stage because he had to control his nerves. And yet he was one of the most dynamic stage presenters I'd ever known. But mindset stuff is part of all of us. And it's not even our fault. If you go back far enough, you could find out where a lot of this stuff originates. My preference is to ignore where it originates and simply overcome it, because it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if you had a bad childhood. Yes, it's a shame. I'm sorry for you. But look, we got work to do here. It's a pandemic. We have an opportunity. Let's use this time, and you can get therapy later. Right now, or go into the jungle and take ayahuasca. I heard that works. I've never tried it. But more importantly, we got work to do. We have a career to build. We have an opportunity to take advantage of. We have people waiting to be led by us. So let's lead them. Let's snap into action here and really take the bull by the horn and move forward. So the issue is generational? I don't think so. I've seen people at every level, at every age, deal with almost the exact same issues when it comes to mindset and attitude.
So what about the person that maybe is older as well? They're 50s, right? That seems to be the number now of, I'm too late. It's too late to do something different. I just got to find a way to ride this out. I mean, those are some of the things that I would say I hear from people I know that are still in
I call bullshit
world.
On that, Patrick. I'm sorry. Maybe I shouldn't use the word bullshit on your show, but I call bullshit on that. And here's why. Because anybody has the same opportunities as anybody else at any age. In fact, if you're 50 or 60 or happen to be 66 like I am, I think you have experience where the others don't. You also have the combined fears of failure that you've had all throughout your life to overcome. Get a coach and get over it, because you could do it. It's in your DNA. Success is part of, hey, look, what's built into us by our creator is the quest to survive. Yeah. Survival is the most natural element of every single thing and every single living thing on the planet. So isn't being successful an element of survival? You see, to me, age is not really, okay, so a quick story. You'll appreciate this. I had just sold my software company. I had just earned out a small fortune for myself and my partner. I had just accomplished 500% growth in 2 years, and I decided to move back to Boston after working in Dallas with the new company. And so I thought to myself, what am I going to do now? You know what? I'm going to go help a couple of VCs maybe get some of their portfolio companies to level up so that they can get some value from them and help those entrepreneurs achieve their dreams too. So I wrote a letter to, I would say, about a dozen VC firms and included my resume, which I thought was absolutely impeccable because I did what all of their portfolio companies are trying to do. And I sent these letters out and I waited and I waited. Crickets. I sent out another batch of letters. Now I'm going outside the Boston area and I'm sending them to Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and I'm not getting a response. So finally I call up one of the VC firms in Boston that I had sent my resume to, and I said, "Hey, is there an associate I could talk with about an opportunity?" And because if you said I'm calling to follow up on my resume, I already tried that. That didn't work. So I said, "Can I speak to one of your associates about an opportunity? I think it might be of value." So I get this guy on the phone, and I said to him, "Look, I don't know if you've seen what I sent you. It was a couple of weeks ago. My name is Mitch Russo," and he goes, stops, and he goes, "Oh yeah. We saw your resume." I said, "Oh, really?" He goes, yeah, we were thinking about it, but we decided it wasn't going to be a fit for us." I said, "That's so interesting. Would you mind telling me why?" And he had to get up and close the door to his office before he did. So he comes back to the phone and he says, "Look, Mitch, you did an amazing thing and we appreciate that, but frankly, you're too old." I said, "What do you mean? I'm 44 years old. How could I be too old?" He goes, "Yeah, when we're raising money, VCs like to see 26 and 27-year-old leaders, and that's kind of the problem. I mean, you're just too old." And I said, "But I would be able to advise those 26 and 27-year-old leaders on where to go next and where to take what they've done, where to create that vision so that it becomes bigger, faster." He says, "Yeah, I know, but it's just not a fit for us. Thanks anyway." So I said, "Okay, I got it. I understand." And I re-strategized at that point. I realized that, you know what, for that world in that moment at that time, I was too old. But I didn't let it stop me. I pivoted. So what I did instead was I started investing myself in individual companies. And eventually I built a small portfolio of investments. I called it Assist Ventures because if you took my money, you had to take my advice at the same time. So it was kind of a trade-off. If you didn't want to work with me, then forget it. I'm not going to invest. But if I'm going to invest, you're going to get my advice too. And I built a very nice, strong portfolio of client companies. And then all of a sudden, what was interesting is that now VCs were calling me and asking if I would help them with their client companies. So, you know what? I think the lesson for me was I'm not waiting around for the approval of others. I'm just going to do what I need to do. And if I get rejected, for heaven's sakes, any of us who wrote a book knows what rejection feels like. I mean, just send your book out to a publisher and ask for an advance. See how many of those you get. See how many checks come in after you do that. And let me know.
Yeah. You reinforce a theme that I continue here over and over again in terms of there's resources and there's resourcefulness. And resources, there's always going to be a gap, a lack of something. My age, I don't have enough education. I'm not tall enough. I'm too tall, whatever it might be, but we all have equal access to resourcefulness. And that's what you demonstrated is your ability to say, okay, now I'm going to go reevaluate what I need to do next to be able to overcome this.
Yeah. And even the resources in many cases, not all, in many cases is an illusion. It's self-imposed. If someone says to you, "You're too short," I mean, you're not going to be able to quite fix that. I mean, if you're going for a modeling job and they need a tall person, they're certainly not going to hire me. Not that I'd ever model, but I'm just saying, the bottom line is that there are certain things that are not necessarily caught up in our emotional state, our mental state, our attitudinal state. It's just physical limitations. If you're trying to hire a woman for a part in a movie, there's no point in you and I applying, right, Patrick? I mean, we'd look terrible in high heels anyway, so what's the point?
Right. Well, speak for yourself. You haven't seen me in high heels.
That's a good point. And now you're getting me a little interested, so be careful. So the thing that, I really want to question really is, there's a woman named Byron Katie, and she has this very beautiful process where when people are feeling bad, she has a set of questions to ask themselves. And one of the questions is that true? And no matter what the answer, the second question is that really true? So if someone says to you, "Well, you're really not smart enough," you ask yourself the question, is that true? You might even come back with, "I guess, yeah, maybe I'm not." But then the second question, is that really true? And most of the time, when you ask the second question, your universal intelligence answers for you.
Interesting. Yeah, I would believe that. I would believe that. Just one funny side story dealing with Chet Holmes in terms of how he used to screen for sales reps, that he would talk about somebody that says, we need superstars. And the person would start talking the phone in to say, I'm not hearing superstar in you, Mitch. I'm not hearing it. And would wait to see what they did next. And if they sort of just said, oh, well, okay, that wasn't the person he was looking for. He wanted the person that was more resourceful or more able to say, well, wait a minute, what exactly are you looking for? And this is what I've done, and not just taking that. So it's interesting.
What you're referring to is that balance between ego strength and empathy. And what we always looked for when we hired people was whether or not they had the proper balance for the position we were hiring. Now, we hired a lot of one-call closers, so we didn't care if they had a lot of empathy, but they needed to have some. But they sure needed the ego strength because they were unable, they'd never be able to stick with a client and close them, particularly on a inbound phone call first time ever. We gave them a script. They had 16 minutes to close a sale. And if they didn't close the sale in 16 minutes, odds are they'd never close it. I mean, we also knew that follow-up was important, but ultimately the majority of our sales were closed on that first call. So it was super important that we did two things really, really well. We made sure that the individual we were hiring had both the balance of ego strength and empathy to take that call and sit in that seat and be rejected 9 out of 10 times, and had the capacity to be trained and accept the training and integrate it. And that was a big problem. A lot of people were either too lazy or too smart, quote unquote, to follow the rules. And our best people were the ones who learned the script cold, learned the objections cold, read the script, followed the instructions, and just right down the line, boom, 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 closed. It's
the same story, Mitch, right? I'm going to tell you, this is what you do. If you do this, you'll be successful. You just do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I'm really asking your listeners to do today is to do a quick self-assessment, sit alone with a pad of paper, write down your assets, make sure that you're not skipping anything, even things you don't think are relevant. And here's just a personal hint from me to you, Patrick. If you're going to do this, get quiet for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes first. I like to meditate. So I like to meditate before I do exercises like this, because what I'm really doing is I'm calling on my higher self to help me answer these questions. And I'm asking you to do the same thing. On yourself, get some answers to these questions, do this little self-assessment, and then string these pieces together and see what it looks like, see what's missing.
Great advice. Outside of this podcast, your information will be on here. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you if they wanted to reach out to you directly?
Simply go to Mitch Russo, MITCHRUSSO.com. There is everything about me and ways to get a hold of me. 200 interviews, in audio interviews on my podcast, another 150 written interviews, another 80 personally written blog posts. I mean, I have a lot of content on MitchRusso.com, and I think a lot of really interesting and relevant stories there too. There's some from me, but the stories of my listeners, the stories of my guests and the people I've interviewed, they're so motivating to me. It's really why I podcast as much as I do. I just love the experience.
I have just had the good fortune of being introduced to you, and I will say already how inspired I've become because of the things that you have done. So I will tell you, it's been an honor for me to get connected with you. So thank you.
Me too, Patrick. Me too. I love what you've done. I love what you're doing, and I look forward to your leadership in this world, which is so desperately needed.
Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Learning from Leaders podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please feel free to rate, review, and subscribe on your preferred podcast listening platform. We really appreciate that effort. Until next time, keep rising above your best as a leader.